5 cutting-edge missile boats, brand new, designed, ordered, paid for, and then frozen in place. France, the very country that built them, suddenly changed its mind. Yet within hours, all 5 boats would vanish from the port. No permission, right in plain sight. Later, the world would call it one of the most daring naval operations of the 20th century. And just a few years after that, these same boats would help make history in the world's first true missile versus missile naval battle. So let's rewind to December 1969, Cherbourg, France. And here's the incredible part. The boats didn't disappear because someone broke the rules. On paper, they were actually allowed to leave. The sale was fully approved. The deal was signed by the French Minister of Defense himself. And just days later, that same minister would demand that the boats be stopped. Today, we're breaking down Operation Noah, hour by hour, from the first signature to the historic missile battle that followed 4 years later. To understand why Israel was willing to risk an international scandal, we have to go back to October 21st, 1967. The Israeli destroyer Eilat was patrolling off Port Said. 2 Egyptian missile boats, safely inside Alexandria Harbor, launched 3 Soviet-made P-15 missiles. The Eilat was hit. 47 sailors were killed. For the first time in history, a warship had been destroyed by a ship-to-ship missile. The message was impossible to ignore. The era of the massive destroyer was ending. The future belonged to fast, missile-armed boats. For Israel, this wasn't just a lost ship. It was a warning. If another attack came, Israel needed a completely different kind of navy, and those 5 boats sitting in Cherbourg suddenly became far more than military hardware. They were part of Israel's answer to a new threat. But after the 6-day war, everything changed. President Charles de Gaulle imposed an arms embargo on Israel. 7 boats had already made it home. 5 were still sitting in Cherbourg, fully built, fully paid for, and going nowhere. The deadlock seemed impossible to break. Israel couldn't build a new fleet overnight, and France couldn't simply walk away from a major industrial order without consequences for the shipyard and the city of Cherbourg. Both sides were stuck. The boats were finished, the money had been paid, but nobody could move. Then came the solution. An Israeli admiral and head of the procurement mission in Paris, Mordecai Limon, proposed a plan. Don't take the boats from France, acquire them again, on paper. A shell company called Starboat SA was registered in Panama. The cover story? Supply vessels for North Sea oil rigs. A complete fabrication, but perfectly plausible on paper. A Norwegian shipowner, Martin Seam, agreed to act as the frontman, and the French Minister of Defense, Michel Debré, approved the deal. There was another crucial player, Felix Amiot, the 75-year-old owner of the Cherbourg shipyard. For Amiot, the choice was simple: follow the embargo or risk everything to keep his shipyard alive. He chose the risk. The paperwork was complete, but paperwork was only half the operation. The real challenge was waiting in the harbor. And this is where things get interesting. For months, Israeli sailors began arriving in Cherbourg in small groups. Civilian clothes, real passports, no fake identities. They flew into Paris, took trains north, and disappeared into the city. Then they quietly moved into Cherbourg, group after group, until nearly 100 Israeli sailors were in place. No one was supposed to notice. And the operation wasn't just about people. The 5 boats needed roughly 250,000 liters of fuel. Buying it all at once would have raised immediate suspicion. So the fuel arrived in small batches, a little at a time, on an ordinary 5-ton fuel truck, under the cover of routine engine testing. Then came another clever trick. For weeks, the engines were started at night. The explanation was simple: testing electronics in the cold. The noise became normal. The guards got used to it, and eventually, no one paid attention anymore. The most critical phase of the operation wasn't the night they escaped. It was the weeks before it. By December 23rd, the crews were ready. The escape was planned for Christmas night. The port would be quiet. The crews were in place. The fuel was aboard. Everything was ready. Almost everything. Because then, the weather turned against them. There was one problem no document could solve. A Force 9 storm was pounding the English Channel. Large ships were staying in port. These small missile boats were expected to cross the Atlantic. Back in Haifa, Navy Command was getting nervous. Urgent messages ordered the boats to leave. Every extra hour in Cherbourg increased the chance that someone would discover what was happening. But Captain Hadar Kimhi faced an impossible choice: obey the order and risk losing 5 boats in the storm, or wait and risk losing them to France. Kimhi chose to wait. Then, at 12:15 in the morning, the radio picked up a BBC weather report. The center of the storm was shifting. For a few hours, the wind was expected to weaken. That was the window. At 2 o'clock in the morning, December 25th, Kim Ki gave the order. Cast off. 5 boats slipped their moorings. No lights, no ceremony. Just 5 dark silhouettes disappearing into the freezing night. 3,000 miles of ocean lay ahead, and the worst was still coming. Once they reached the Atlantic, another problem appeared. Water had entered the fuel tanks of the Hets. There was no shore, no mechanic waiting on a dock, and no time to waste. The crew had to determine what kind of water it was: fresh water or seawater. Because if seawater had contaminated the fuel, the engines could fail. And if those engines stopped, the Hets would be stranded in the middle of the storm. So the crew did something remarkably simple. They literally tasted the fuel. A tiny sample, a quick test, and the answer was good news. The water wasn't salty. They drained the contaminated fuel and kept going. The 5 boats were still alive. But back in Cherbourg, no one even knew they were gone. On Christmas morning, a journalist arrived at the port. He looked toward the docks and noticed something strange. The 5 boats were gone. He called the BBC, and that was how the French authorities discovered what had happened. Not through intelligence, not through the Coast Guard, a journalist. Panic broke out in Paris. And then came the most extraordinary part. Michel Debré, the very minister who had approved the sale, demanded that the boats be stopped. The French military was ordered to consider an attack in international waters, but the order was refused. The Prime Minister personally called off the operation. By then, it was already too late. The boats were heading south. Stopping them now would turn a secret operation into an international crisis. Admiral Limon was expelled from France, but the boats kept moving. December 31st, 1969. New Year's Eve. After thousands of miles at sea, all 5 boats finally entered Haifa. The Sufa, the Ga'ash, the Herev, the Hanit, and the Hetz. Israeli phantoms roared overhead, wings rocking in celebration. The operation was over, but its real test was still 4 years away. In 1973, during the Yom Kippur War, those same boats met the Syrian Navy off the coast of Latakia. This became the first true naval battle fought with anti-ship missiles on both sides. The Syrian ships carried larger, longer-range Styx missiles. The Israelis had something else: electronic warfare. They jammed the incoming missiles, closed the distance, and launched their own Gabriel missiles. Several Syrian vessels were destroyed. Not a single Israeli missile boat was lost. The 5 boats France had tried to keep in Cherbourg had become the core of a new kind of naval warfare. The whole world believed one thing: taking a fleet out of France was impossible. This operation proved something else entirely. Embargoes, signatures, locked ports, none of them matter when survival is on the line. They didn't ask for permission. They simply rewrote the rules of the game. So what was it? Brilliant calculation or sheer audacity that no one else would have dared attempt? Tell me in the comments. History isn't always written by the powerful. Sometimes it's written by those who refuse to accept the word no. Subscribe. Next time, we're breaking down operations that were once considered impossible until someone turned them into textbooks on tactics.